Nice Games Club is on break for the next few weeks, so your nice host can take time to wrap up work on Widget Satchel, coming to PC, Xbox One, PS4, and Nintendo Switch in 2019. In the meantime, we picked out a few of our favorite episodes from our first 2 years in the Clubhouse. This is episode 88, The Gaming Press, with Ben Hanson and Holly Harrison. What I love about this episode, it's the only interview episode I think we're going to be publishing during the break. And it was cool because Ben Hanson, he's a video producer at Game Informer, and which is based here in Minneapolis. And as soon as we started the show, he said, "Hey, can I be on your thing?" And it was like this 18-month process to finally get him on the show. We hear the whole story in the episode, and it really is about how the show started and how far it's gone. And that's the reason I picked it. But also, the episode itself is really interesting. Bunch of great stories from Ben. And we have a guest host, Holly Harrison, who is our very favorite. And you'll hear a lot from her as well. So be nice and have a listen. Welcome, Ben.
Hooray! Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I'm so sorry. It's been a long time coming. I feel like a real jerk about it.
Yeah, so the background on this is when we started this show at the end of 2016, we put out a tweet saying, "Hey, we're doing this podcast," and like 5 of our friends retweeted it. And then we got a reply from you immediately that said, "Hey, can I be on your podcast?"
This is in 2016?
It was 18 months ago.
Oh my God, that's embarrassing.
But here's the thing is, and we've talked about it a couple times because we've been trying to like nail you down we've been in contact since. Right. It's not you into the wilderness or anything. But we've talked about how you saying that right when we got started was like a big deal to us.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I don't think you meant it as a big deal, but like we felt like, oh, okay, like someone's taking us seriously. You know?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah, somehow it came across my feed, and it's like, okay, podcast, games, Minnesota. I like all those things. Yeah, to be involved with this. Yeah.
So, like, you know, it never bothered us that we could never figure out a time for you.
Okay. Well, here's the main problem, and this is where I'm too selfish.
Yeah.
You guys were recording on Survivor nights. I know the show is like 18 years old, and it's hokey, and it's on CBS, but I just love that show, and I can't peel myself away from like a big group gathering, good group watching of Survivor. I'm so sorry.
Are there
That's
Survivor
so understandable.
Like,
do you want me to edit that out of the show or anything?
It's so embarrassing. Yeah. Survivor themed treats. Yeah. For the finale last season, we had it was like, you know, a bunch of, you got the rice. Then we had like, I think we had like
the bugs.
Steak shish kebabs, because that was a big plot line in one of the seasons. Okay. It's very stupid. So we tried as much as possible. Oh, a coconut themed pie, of course. You know. Yeah.
We would have me and Steven and a couple friends would get together and watch Terrace House. Have you seen that?
Terrace House? No.
Oh, it's great.
What is it like?
It's this Japanese reality show where it's just a bunch of people living in a house together, and like they edit out like all of the like fights and then just have them afterward being like, "That got a little heated."
Just because like polite Japanese society?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And then the American version of the show, they just use those excerpts and then run the whole show on that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, before we get into it, we also want to say hi to Holly.
Hi.
Hi, Holly. Steven.
Hi.
We had you on a show a couple months ago. And
was it? I think it was like last summer.
It was a while. We have a history now in this program.
Yeah.
And we always talked about if any of us ever left town or was out, that we would need an official Joan Rivers. and we just decided it was you. And I don't know if he told you that.
No. I know that you're referring to Johnny Carson probably era Joan Rivers, but the first thing I thought was like, I am a mean old lady, so that's perfect.
However you want to take that is great.
Yep.
So you're here because Steven is out of town at an anime convention.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do we want to explain that or just leave that lay? Like,
I thought that was one of your jokes, Joan. I thought you were just laying into Steven.
Yeah, no, that's not it.
Yeah, he's out there promoting Fingens at there's a little indie booth there at the Anime Central in Chicagoland, somewhere near there. We should get details on that.
It'll be in the show notes.
But yeah, he's got Fingens out there, and also the company he works for has a game out there as well, and he's sort of doing double duty. So it's kind of a great trip for him. So, but it's sad now because we finally got you, Ben, and Steven missed it. So
I don't want to say we're the same person, but you've never seen us in the same room together. Right. All I'm saying.
So I'm just saying we're having to get you back again for it to be like an official fulfillment of that initial request.
You're right. Done deal. Okay.
So yeah, we'll let that go forever. Okay, well, let's get into it. We got 2 topics that you wanted to talk about that you suggested for us. First one is what games catch the eye of the gaming press? And I think a lot of our listeners are going to be interested in that.
It's so hard.
And as someone on the other side of that fence, give us your wisdom.
Oh gosh, I don't know how much wisdom I have. Just to set it out,
yeah.
I'm the video producer at Game Informer, not previews editor, none of that stuff. So I barely touch touch the magazine. I might suggest an entry in the top 10 list somewhere, and it might squeeze it in. But outside of that,
So don't send them your emails.
no, I am no gatekeeper here. But I can talk about the podcast and just in general, walking around conventions, walking around E3, what kind of stuff you see, what catches your eye.
Yeah, you see so much, and I think that's where your wisdom lies. Is where a lot of game developers we infer, we read articles, we go to a couple of these events.
Right.
We don't get anywhere close to the whole picture.
And what's fascinating to me is I hear very smart developers even, and local, international, all over the place, where they say, developing games is great, but I just don't want to communicate it. I don't want to try and market this thing and actually come up with some plan to get it in front of other people's eyeballs. Where it's like, that's the fun part, isn't it?
I should quit my job and be like, hire me. I'll do the thing you hate.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, do you guys feel that way? Where it's like, that's the hassle, is just getting across that finish line and getting it to other people. You
know what it is I like it. I like showing off my game at an event. But then when I go home and I realize what I accomplished, it's so little for the amount of energy I put in that it really turns me off from it. It sours me on the experience. But I don't like when developers are like, oh, no, sales, that's not for me. I'm an artist.
Right.
I'm like, well, I'm an artist too, but like that's a little bit, that's going to hurt you. It's also a pretty crummy attitude. Right. But I get it. I totally get because it's like it is pushing a boulder up a mountain.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what is that boulder? Like, what is the effort that you're extending? Is it just explaining the game 400 times over and over and over again?
Yeah. So like when there's a couple of different ways, right? You're at an event and you're showing off the game, like a public event, right?
Yeah.
And so for my case, it took me a while to realize like, oh, well, my game's in development. So what is it that I want from people? Well, I want their emails, right? So I can get them to sign up for a mailing list, get a beta, that sort of thing. I'm not really selling it yet, but I still want to get people, like when it's on sale, I want them to buy it. So it's kind of like, I don't know what your goal is exactly. Like when you're talking to a person, it just becomes like a huge ball of spaghetti.
Right.
Of like how you think about your own game and how you present it to people, and depending on where you are at. Or like when you are putting a trailer together, it's like, well, should I focus on these particular features that I know are great about the game, or should I focus on the one feature I know will hook the player and just trust that they'll come to find the things they love?
Right. It's going to be tough to figure out like how much to compare it to other games as well.
Yeah.
Like you see that all the time in press releases where it's
this
like, okay,
that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. You like Cuphead, then you'll love this. It's like, well, okay, stop pushing it so hard. But I think I enjoy those easy comparisons, even in the AAA space. It's always just a huge relief doing developer interviews when they just will easily say like, oh, we love Dark Souls and we're kind of like it in this way, just to have a frame of reference for, just gamers being gamers,
Yeah. It's good to hear because I hear that too, like, oh, this meets that is so cliche and people hate it. But when I'm at events or when I talk to people, they tell me, oh, your game is like this meets that. And I'm like, well, then it's got to work.
Of course.
Right?
Like, why would, you would appreciate it if you were looking at somebody else's game. Like, what is one I played at the Glitch anniversary? The where you rotate the little colored cube around.
Color jumper.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that was one where it's just like, okay, I forget the developer's name. He was very nice.
Ben.
There we go. I can't believe I forgot
that. There could be only one.
Like just having that easy reference for like, oh, it's kind of like Super Meat Boy, except it's not like it in these ways. It's such a relief just to talk about that right away and not try to grab onto the success fully of Super Meat Boy to be like, well, if you played Super Meat Boy, then you'll absolutely need to play this game.
There you go. Yeah.
And what's worse than that would be saying this game is like nothing you've ever played before. Like that's way worse than having an easy comparison.
Yes, that's true. Because you can look at it and be like, well, now I'm just left with an ambiguous taste in my mouth. Like, I'm not going to go and talk about this game if it's that impossible to talk about. Yeah. Martha, do you like communicating about your game? Is it tough?
Well, I really like going to the in-person, like I like showing games at things. It's really fun for me. Like I'm working on a game Clawbreaker with crabs. And so I just do like this little dance and try to get people to come and play the game. And that's super fun, even though it's like draining. But
wait, so like somebody's across the room, instead of waving to them to get them to come over, you just make like weird crabby sounds? Okay.
Yeah.
Can confirm that works.
I've seen it in action. It works. And you get other people doing it, or at least me. I was down. I'm like, I'll help.
Yeah, it's very easy to get people to like jump on board. And that's really fun. Like even when I'm showing off a game I don't particularly like, I think in person is where I am really good at. What I'm bad at is like the social media or whatever. So that's hard for me. But
that whole thing.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what can you trickle out every single week talking about your game over and over and over again on social media? Like, here's this feature.
I added a code thing that you don't care about.
And that goes out to game dev Twitter, right? And game dev Twitter will give you all the likes you want to fill your soul.
Right.
But like that doesn't do anything for you going forward. And I think some developers mix those two things up. They show off like here's because gamers like seeing games in development, right?
Yeah,
they like
for
seeing
sure.
updates and stuff and the behind the curtain. That's a really cool experience. But a lot of times, especially indie devs, small timers, like our updates go out to game dev Twitter, and it's important to know that so you don't like waste your marketing energy on that stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
Effort versus impact.
Yeah, that's truly social. That is really useful. And I love doing that, but I never believe that's going to sell me a copy.
Right. What do you believe will sell you a copy?
I honestly have no idea.
It's very tough.
Martha dancing in front of my movie.
Yeah, that's probably the only sure bet. Even from my perspective, it's so confusing. You know, you look at like big games, like, something like Tacoma. Like follow-up to Gone Home. Everyone in the world played Gone Home. It's great. And then Tacoma came out, and according to Steam Spy, at least, it was like a couple months after that game came out. I think it was like barely over 10,000 copies on Steam. Oh. It's like, how is this possible? Like Xbox was pushing it hard. We had it on the cover. Oh, it was a couple years before its release, but we had it on the cover, It's like, what does a game need to do if that kind of pedigree can't blast you through to a wider audience? It's terrifying.
Yeah. What's the difference between like mind share and then converting people to customers?
Right.
Yeah, you don't. It's like there's still so many unknowns.
I think I don't remember when did that game come out?
And it's last year, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
See, and I just realized that it was out recently. Like I was like, oh, that game, it's out. I can buy it.
Oh my gosh. It seems like they're out there doing plenty of interviews, but it is just that I don't know if it's an easy game to get excited about. Even like Gone Home, it kind of like hit the culture a little bit harder. People were talking about it a lot more, whereas Tacoma, it launched and people were like, oh yeah, maybe someday I'll play it. But no one's like, I'm going to play it day one. I'm going to have it pre-downloaded.
I pre-ordered.
Yeah, exactly. It's just not the type of game. And even, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's related to the genre a little bit too, but we saw that a little bit with like Prey from Arcane. It's another weird example where it's a big game, Bethesda backing it in a big way, but it's that immersive sim genre. It's just a tough one to get out there where it's like immersive sim fans, they're hardcore, they're great, but they're not exactly the pre-order type and the line up around the store type of crowd, So like they'll play it at some point, but they're not waiting for every new trailer to drop so they can analyze every story detail in there.
And on the other side of that, I was like, oh, Prey, that looks kind of interesting. I'll read up on that. Oh, there's an older game, but it's really good. But like because I'm not interested in that, I'm not really part of that like that fandom. Yeah. Like I felt a little bit walled off from it. So it seems like they lost on both sides of that fence.
Yeah, I think that's true. I guess so. So the point is, it's nearly impossible, everybody.
Right.
It's very hard.
Give up now.
Did you read the blog post? It's interesting. It went up maybe a month or so ago. Where's the developer of Where Water Tastes Like Wine?
Oh, yeah.
Just talking about like, I thought we did everything right. And then it launched out there. And I forget how many copies they said it sold. It was something like maybe 4,000.
Right.
And it's like, all right, well, I guess that's it for us. We'll see ya. It was just the most depressing thing. Because, I mean, we gave the game a 9.0. Elise, a Game Informer editor, really loved it. And it's like, okay, still not enough.
It was, it had a lot of like buzz as like the next sort of like, because it was such a unique game. And I remember thinking my first impressions were, oh, that's really cool. Why would I want to play that? Like, so when I read that article, I mean, it is sad, right? Because they seem to have everything going for them. But I also wasn't that surprised.
Right.
I think, because it just seemed like just being new and different is enough to get someone to read an article about you. Mm-hmm. But that's not, I feel like that next step was never taken. Because I never got, from any of those impressions and any of those, like, those previews that it got, I never really got the impression of what the game was or why I would want it.
Yeah, even like Elise was raving about it, and I went and watched the trailer. It's like, all right, it's a still image of a wolf in a shop talking. It's like, that's a tough game to cut a trailer around. Like, how the hell do you do that?
Right.
Oh, yeah. So what are some success stories? Like, I feel like we're talking about games that
sorry for the negative note.
Tell some things that didn't fail.
Some things that didn't fail and why they didn't fail.
What does break through?
Yeah, it's tough. The easy, stupid shorthand is like, oh, it'd be cool if your game looks good to stream. If it's a fun streaming game, it is a success there. You think of like, this isn't AAA necessarily, but like that Friday the 13th game.
Oh,
came out where it came out and it was a janky mess and everybody, I felt like in the press was like, okay, good idea, but all right, moving on. And then it just kept climbing up the Twitch charts. Like, what is this? People are really into watching people get murdered because it's good reactions. So yeah, more gore, you guys, indie devs, let's get out there. Come on. More blood, more jump scares. This is what you guys need out there.
Yeah, that success was interesting because part of its sort of jankiness was part of its charm.
Right.
And the license that was attached to it, I don't think was the big reason for its success.
Yeah.
Right?
I think you're right.
Like the first impression, you'd be like, oh yeah, great, because it's a licensed property. But I don't think that's why people liked it.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about like conventions, what catches people's eye. Everybody wants a cool new game to champion. It's not like, well, maybe some journalists are snobs out there, but it's few and far between. Most people are walking around conventions being like, what game can I show off? What can I communicate to my audience that will be cool? Largely so then I can seem cool too. It is as shallow as that. I think a lot of times it's like, you want to find the most obscure band and then rave about it to your friends. It's like the equivalent of looking through a record store.
before they were cool.
Exactly. Right? Like, this is such a dumb thought, but I've had it a lot where it's like, oh man, I think if I go back in my Twitter history, like I might be one of the first people to be like, no guys, Rocket League is really cool. It's a stupid sense of pride. Like, Stardew Valley, seriously guys. Like that level of thing. So people are eager for that. And the better or more you can get it in front of people's eyes that have that, I don't know, appetite to communicate, I think it's a good thing. And I don't know if that comes down to the dopey thing of like customizing emails to specific outlets or people. I think that's surprisingly effective.
Yeah.
We get so many generic emails all over the place.
Dear game outlet journalism, my game is cool.
Right.
Love developer.
It's a lot like online dating, right? You want to look at their profile, find specific interesting beats, and then try and corner it towards that, where it's like, oh, if you follow a game or a podcast like the Easy Allies podcast or something, you can say, oh, I know that Damiani guy, he really loves sim games. So if I pitch this, it's like, hey, I'm a big fan of the show. Right. I know you like these types of games. You might want to check this out with a trailer that gets straight to the point. That seems like an okay route. But the downside is, even if you get that, you're not a surefire bet.
Right, yeah.
Even if we talk about a game on a podcast, like the Game Informer show, for a random example, I don't know what that percentage of the audience is that's like, well, I need to go out and buy this immediately just because the game was technically mentioned. If it's so good and you just hit that editor in that sweet spot of passion where then they go on there and scream into the microphone and say, everybody within the sound of my voice, go download this game. Then maybe you might get like a 4% like conversion rate. I have no idea.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's because when you're sending out those emails, which I have done, and I'm like try to personalize as much as I can, but it's like I only have 12 hours to devote to this today. I can't write personalized love letters to every journalist. Totally.
You only have to personalize the first like 2 sentences.
Well, even that,
that's true actually.
And the thing, it's really interesting because I don't know if anybody else has this problem, but because I don't do that professionally, I get there and I'm like, oh, but this is fake, or like, oh, I'm going to copy and paste that because they're not going to know. Like, and it's like, oh, I feel similarly about these two outlets, so I'll just write them the same note.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I know I'm a fraud. Like, so I overthink it.
Yeah, and then you're like scanning it again and again to be like, okay, is the copy paste? Did I leave any specific things like just plural or like references? That's not going to work. Yeah.
And I'd like to think that the person on the other side of that like is also a human and will like, if there's a mistake, they'll be like okay with that or whatever. But like you never know what's going to make you go into the junk mail folder, right?
Right.
I don't know. I think worrying less about it is probably important, especially if you're a small time, if you're not hiring someone specifically for that task, because it's totally crazy making. Yeah. Because even when you can like put all the data in it, like you still don't know what the result is going to be.
Yeah.
At least I don't. Like, Holly, you know more about this because you do this professionally.
Yeah. I do.
So, like...
What do you want me to say?
Say anything to make you feel better.
Well, even if you feel like you're wasting a lot of time and putting in a lot of effort that might not be paying off, A, it's good practice. B, you'll never be like, maybe I should have customized the email more.
Yeah.
Like, you weren't just blasting it out into the world. Mm-hmm. And I kind of have a recurring argument with my boss, and this is, of course, in the nonprofit space. We're mostly pitching local media. It's different. But she's a big fan, or was, before I proved myself to be right, a big fan of doing, like, just a big, wide blast. Like, email every reporter at this local outlet, every editor, every producer, and just hope that it sticks for someone. And the most customization you get is, like, getting their first name in there. Mm-hmm. What's a better strategy is emailing 12 people a custom email that shows that you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And even if they don't pick up your story, you might get a really nice no, which is also one of my favorite things. Like, I like to report those up. I'm like, this person was interested. They just didn't have time. That's great. I'm going to email them again.
Yeah. Right. That's data you can act on going forward.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, I think finding that balance is probably the tricky part. It's like, how do you narrow that down? One, for your own sanity, and also to give those notes the attention they deserve.
Yeah.
What about on the Twitter front, Holly? What do you find really works?
Front?
Yeah.
For like getting people to click on tweets and then buy your page?
Yeah.
Nothing. Twitter is a wasteland.
How dare you? How dare you? Did you see my Rocket League tweet?
I guess I'm not sure in the game dev space. Honestly, in my own experience, it's different from every job I've had. Right now, Twitter is our most dead network. Where we're
Really?
Yeah, it works best for us around like legislative issues, not something that games is touching much. Like it's full of like really thoughtful champions who want to talk about services and the politics that affect them, and not people who want to buy our stuff or anything else.
I'm fascinated by Twitter analytics in general and YouTube analytics as well with my job, but it's such a stupid, simple lesson, but something that I constantly learn on a weekly basis is just it always pays to be specific.
Right.
You know, like every week we tweet out the Game Informer Show podcast, and if the tweet just says, hey, there's a new episode of the Game Informer Show podcast, we talk about more games than you can shake a fist at. Come on down. It's like, you know, we have millions of Twitter followers, and I don't know, it maybe 100 people will click through it. But if it's like, hey, we debate whether or not Borderlands 3 is going to be at E3 this year, like just something so specific, even if it's like just a sliver of that podcast, the click-through rate is so much bigger. And it kind of applies to YouTube headlines as well. Yeah. Where I don't know if you pay attention to what you're actually clicking through on YouTube, but you know, there's always just nonsense in my home landing feed where it's like, Steven Spielberg talks about working with Martin Scorsese, you know, and it's like, sure, yeah, I'll watch that. And it's like 20 minutes, you know, and maybe they don't get to that question until minute number 17, but I don't really feel too robbed by it. Like I like knowing concretely, if I take this action and click on this thing, what will I know coming out of it? Like, what is the information that I'll have when I leave this?
I feel like talk shows have really perfected that on YouTube specifically. Like, they have a clip and they have, like, one specific weird anecdote that's rising
100%.
from it. It's like Stephen Yeun talks about how Conan O'Brien has been pronouncing his name wrong for 2 years. And I'm like, I want to watch that. I don't just want to watch an interview with him. Yeah. Well, I probably would, actually, but, you know.
No, you're totally right. Talk shows have been amazing like this. And you can watch the YouTube evolution over the last couple of years. I feel like Jimmy Fallon was the smartest, the earliest maybe in that front of just being hyper-specific, but absolutely everybody, like what was it? J.J. Abrams was on Colbert not too long ago. And I think the headline for the entire interview, which is a wide-ranging interview, was just J.J. Abrams says the script for Star Wars Episode 9 is locked down or something like that. Or like he's finished the script. Right. Which is such a weird thing, but that's a specific detail. It's like, yes, I will now watch that entire interview.
It's like honest clickbait is what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess so.
Good SEO.
Yeah. And then you read the comments and I'm sure it's always just clickbait. Right. Come on. That's no good. That's not fair at all. We get it all the time. I read every YouTube comment for Game Informer, which
that's news.
It doesn't help. It doesn't help my sanity in general, but I think it's fun. I like getting into the trenches like that. And something we see all the time, and it's very frustrating, is, you know, we'll have, here's a good example, is like Shadow of the Tomb Raider. This Elise Favis, again, who I mentioned previously. She went and played the game, but they aren't releasing any gameplay footage yet for the new Tomb Raider game. And so we talk about it. We talk about how the game plays on our show, and it's like, well, now for the YouTube pull-out standalone version of that segment, how can we work the word gameplay in there without making people angry that it's not showing actual gameplay? And so you couch it and you frame it saying, our thoughts and discussion about Shadow of the Tomb Raider's gameplay. Right. And then it's still filled with downvotes. And, you didn't show us any of the gameplay. No. But if we just say, we talk about that game, I think it's less
say
clickable.
like the not gameplay, not dash gameplay.
Well, it's tricky because this is totally true, I find, when I'm trying to communicate something about my game, is that I know things about my process and my industry and my work, and that the people I'm talking to don't, and I don't realize that right away. So in your example, like, you try to be very careful, but your audience doesn't realize you can't get that footage.
Yes, you're totally right.
And they don't know why. Like, it doesn't make sense to them why you can't, right? Because you're Game Informer. Yes. And it's really not their fault that they don't know that. But there's almost no way you can, like, give them a little lesson about that first before they read your headline.
Yeah, you're totally right. And we also had a weird case recently where our cover story right now is Days Gone from Sony Bend out there in Oregon. And so with that one, it's something lined up in a magical way where the developers were really on board, Sony was really on board, and we have a ton of gameplay to show off, like hours and hours, right? And so we're putting it out there, but of course, this game isn't coming out until next year. And so it's like, it's a little janky, little broken around the edges still, like, go easy, everybody. And so it's like, all right, cool, let's put a big thing that says alpha gameplay on the screen, big watermark, let everybody know. And then every time we talk about the game too, it's like, all right, well, we want to communicate that this is not finished footage.
Yeah.
And it's just impossible. Every comment, is like, this looks a little bit broken. It's not ready. This isn't ready to be released. It's like, yeah, I know.
What do you think alpha means?
Well, that's the big debate is a bunch of know-it-alls being like, you guys don't know what alpha means. I know what alpha means more than the commenter before. All that stuff. It's just a mess to try and communicate that. But that is just the thing of like, we're used to it. We know where that's coming from. It's really generous of both Sony and the developers to be that open about it and to then use it as a weapon against them. It's like, no, you guys be thankful that you get this early look at this game. It's wild.
Right. And that relationship between the press and especially like AAA developers gamers don't want that to be too cozy, but they want it to be pretty cozy.
They want yes, they want the results of the access.
Yes,
right. But then it's also going to be used against you very easily.
Right. Yeah, there's no way to win.
Do you guys follow the AAA scene much in the indie game scene? Do you ever feel like there's lessons from that you try and partake
from AAA?
Yeah,
I find that people tend to learn the wrong lessons from AAA. And I don't know this for certain, but it feels like that everyone's like, oh, we want to have like a pre-announcement trailer or something like 6 months before or something. And it's like, well, I don't know that people have the bandwidth for that. Like if it's an indie game, right? Or they put a lot. It's the thing I saw a lot when I was working in video production. I saw a lot of filmmakers who were shopping their short films around to film festivals, like puff themselves up like they were big time Hollywood film directors. And they didn't do it because they were like, they felt that they were all full of themselves. They just think that's what you had to do. And I see game developers doing that also. And so, I think certainly the people in our community, because we have each other to share our experiences, like I don't see a lot of people making a ton of huge mistakes that way. But when you go into like a web forum, like a game dev forum, and people start asking their first questions about these things, like it's amazing how quickly they're like, oh, I thought I had to do it like Activision does it,
Just because so many people maybe come from Activision,
right? And because as a consumer, you are exposed to that you get most of it from the AAA space, right? And a lot of times you hear about the big breakthrough indie games from AAA media, right? And so it's just hard to learn. I don't know about the right lessons, but it's easy to learn the wrong lessons.
Yeah, and beyond the communication angle as well, just in terms of game design, do you feel like people overreach because of AAA, where they say, I'm starting to make an indie game, I'm going to make Uncharted, and then it just turns into the most broken piece of garbage you've ever seen?
I think that lasts like a week.
Okay.
Certainly the people I know and anyone who's ever tried to do it, like you get disabused of those notions very quickly. I'm not super worried about developers biting off more. I think scope is the thing that like we say on this show all the time, and everybody in this community says all the time. So I think we kind of get it now.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? Like, is that lesson learned?
I don't know.
Well, Martha, I listened to another episode of this podcast, and you brought up the Double Fine documentary, which is one of my favorite things ever in the world.
So
period.
cool.
It's incredible, and it's all for free on YouTube. You can watch it at 720. It's great. But in the Double Fine, like Two-Player Productions, that video team that's out there, they also produce videos about Amnesia Fortnite, which is Double Fine's game jam. And going back years and years ago, it was fascinating to watch a studio with a lot of talented developers like Double Fine, where they broke off into this game jam, and one group was like, we love Team Eco. We want to make a game that's like Eco. Let's go. And you just get to watch them over 2 weeks try and clear that bar, and they don't. Like, it's so hard to shoot for that high of a target. We're going to make the most beautiful, artistic, smooth thing you can experience, and then it's just a clunker.
Yeah. The mechanics in Eco are not terribly complicated. You feel like you probably could until you start doing it, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Because there's more to it than just like the tech requirements or the mechanical complexity. Like I think that's the thing I think game developers take the longest time to learn is that like the narrative structures and the sort of the game feel and the sort of emotional impart that you get from a game is as complicated and difficult to design and assemble as all of your scripts.
Yeah, for sure. Like just at that Glitch anniversary, I played more of Anti-Piracy, which is called Hyperdot now?
Yes.
Hyperdot. Okay.
Officially.
Okay, there we go. Officially.
Now, yeah.
I saw the trailer. It was great. The announcement of the name trailer. No, but now it's one of those very subtle things where it's like, it just feels good to move. Like the momentum of that dot is one of those secret little ingredients in that genius of a game, right? Where it's just like, the momentum is perfect. And I don't think people would appreciate it. It's like, no, you touch the controller and it moves a certain way. It's like, no. There's art in those Mario jump physics. Like, there's something you guys don't see. Yeah.
Well, as a video editor, it's like the best cut is the one no one notices.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I want to talk to you about the video world.
Okay.
Because you started out in the video world.
You guys can take a break over there.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. We'll talk about the analytics or something. The video world. I don't know. But how much skill and just kind of mind space, I think, carried over between being a video editor and then moving into game design?
I mean, for me personally, I don't think this is true for other people. I think everyone comes to their own way. But for me, like 100%. Like, I feel like as a game designer and developer, I feel I am the same storyteller I was when I was making films.
Huh.
And what's interesting about that is, like, I don't want to make cinematic style video games.
Yeah.
And because I can just make movies for that. And I think that makes it like I can scratch that itch somewhere else. But as a storyteller, like in terms of the impression I want to get, like the stories I want to tell about people and concepts, like I have those same drives. And I don't think that has anything to do with like the tools I'm holding. I think that's just my identity as an artist. And that gives me confidence in my identity as an artist, that it's not tied to specific forms or tools or methods. But I definitely feel that, like, if I had not spent all the years I did as a filmmaker and then the years I still am as a video producer, like, I don't think I would be as good a game developer. And that's totally apart from like all the time I needed to take to learn those skills. That's utterly separate from that, I think.
Yeah. So just on the storytelling front, just like with the games, I want to create more emergent narratives for the players. I'm not going to sit back for this cutscene that's just going to bore everybody to tears.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's so much you say when you're making a game that you don't mean to say. And that's the thing I learned as working in video production, is that everything you do says something. And so if you don't know what that is, then you don't have full control of your work.
Do you need full control of your work?
I mean, I guess you don't. It's interesting you put it that way, because like immediately I'm like, I guess not.
Yeah.
But I think you should be cognizant of, if there are things like, oh, I don't really know what this imparts, but as long as you know that, I guess, as long as you have a general sense of where you're going, and you don't do things just because it's the way it's been done. And but at the same time, I'm not a believer in novelty. Mm-hmm. Like I don't doing something different for its own sake is not interesting to me. Even if that could get maybe more click-throughs on my email.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't know. I think just being as deliberate as you want to be and as you can. And that ends up, then I spend a weekend working on the tiniest thing no one notices. But like that, to me, that's my process. That's how I feel. That's how that legitimizes myself as an artist.
Yeah. It reminds me on the video front of just the quality. It's important.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't need to be 100%. This is the very specific thing I'm thinking of, is like opening the game. It's just like, okay, it's this type of game. I think I got it. Moving on. It reminds me of like, if your audio quality isn't ideal in a video, if you start out that way, if it's like a 6 out of 10, if someone's just clicking through on YouTube, it's like, okay, not the end of the world. We'll go through. But if it's jumping all over the place and you're using different mics left and right, then it'll really stand out. But basically, like those first couple seconds, even with a game or a video, it's like, all right, it set a tone. I won't question it now. I'm going to go along with it.
Right. It's we talked about this in a recent episode about trust. About a player should trust in that the developer knows what they're doing, so that the player will let them take on. If you want to do something crazy with your game, something weird, something non-standard, the player should let you take them there. And so I'm very much dislike movies, for example, that have amazing middle set pieces, and then their like dialogue scenes are like staged and edited poorly.
Yeah,
because then it's like, oh, okay, well then there's no. This was just a production. It's not a work.
Yeah, Right. I always love the dumb thought experiment too. Just thinking about games versus movies. I forget who said it originally, but just that idea that 2 characters in a room talking in a movie is the cheapest thing you can do. And the easiest, and the complete opposite is maybe true for video games.
Yeah,
it's very hard to pull off and not just bump people the wrong way.
Yeah, and it's the difference between what's technically difficult and what's actually difficult.
Okay,
right?
Yeah,
those 2 people in a room, that's easy to stage, right? But that might be the hardest scene to film.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
and not just for like actorly reasons, but for all sorts of reasons, right? And so, not separating those things out and taking a more holistic view of a project, I think, is important to me.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I took over a big part of the show.
Yeah, we're still here.
But I mean, do you guys have thoughts on that? Like that that idea of that sort of holistic approach to games, or what matters, I guess, coming through?
I feel like, okay, so if I were making games more often than in a game jam, so my background is writing. I was an English major. I turned that writing talent to marketing, so I sold out, I guess. But it's something that I recognize a lot in games that I'm playing. So if the story is wacky but the dialogue is good, I'm there for it. And if the story is really good but then it ends on a really hokey note, and I'm like, oh, why'd you do this? Like, I really wanted to, really wanted to tell everyone about this, and now you ruined it for me.
Night in the Woods is ending? Is that what you're talking about?
No.
Okay.
I was actually thinking of What Remains of Edith Finch, but
oh, interesting. Okay.
That game made me cry, and then at the end I was like, oh, of course. Like, that is how that would go. Anyway, but I was thinking, as you were talking about not bringing big cinematics into games because you keep them separate. I'm like, well, I would bring that would be my whole thing, because that's the only thing I can do. I'm like, here you go. Here are well-written characters. Enjoy. Yeah. Right. But I wouldn't bring like a novel in. I wouldn't make people read more than dialogue. Right. So I guess that.
Well, and there are games that are like, games that are just cinematics with like a Telltale game or something.
Yeah. Right.
Like that's also a perfectly legitimate game. And that's why, like, when I talk about these things, it's really about how I approach it, right? And that's the best thing about games, is they can be anything, right?
Yeah. So game jam experience. Do you normally do writing there then, or like what are you doing in a game jam?
That is what I can contrip.
Okay. All right. And that usually goes well?
Writing. And I can be like, those colors are bad. Change them.
And then the artist says no.
Yep. I would say that's my strongest suit. So.
Okay. I feel you. It's a scary thing where I always worry about that myself. Like, someday maybe it'd be kind of fun to work on a game, but I don't want to be that stupid ideas person. Like, especially like knowing video, like I love being hands-on and being actually helpful. You don't want 16 producers for a video standing around doing nothing, where it's like, no, actually I'm the one lugging the equipment around and actually making all these cuts, doing everything, Yeah. And so it's comes from a very insecure place of, I don't want to just sit around in a game jam and not have anything to do. That's terrifying. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's like, when I've been in groups where someone has like a clear, this is what I want to do. Like, that's how Clawbreaker started, was at a game jam. And Ava was just like, I want to make a game about crabs fighting, and this is what we're doing.
She had a vision.
Yeah. Like, those are so cool, because like you have a leader to follow who has, an idea, and they can pare down the scope creep way more, because their ideas are so, succinct. So it's really helpful to have someone who isn't actually typing or drawing or whatever, because we're working on that sort of thing.
Right. And was she communicating that like in a PowerPoint presentation, or like how is she communicating that? Just saying it over and over again? Just crabs fight, go.
Well, like we would bring her stuff and be like, what do you think of this? And like Lizzie would start drawing out like, here's an example of what I'm thinking of the crabs, and Ava would be like, I like that one, but I don't like that one. I like that one, but I don't like that one. Just
George Lucas. Oh my God. Does George Lucas stamp on the different crabs?
Yeah. Pretty much.
And if someone is as nice and smart as Ava, no one's going to be like, boo, this person's a jerk.
Yeah.
Like, very few people can pull it off as well as she could.
Yeah, that's true.
The trick to being the idea person is, one, having good ideas, and two, like letting people contribute, and like and being someone that people can follow, right?
Right.
Because it is like, being the idea person is like, it's very bold of you to say that, but like there are people who can do it.
I guess so. Yeah.
And I'm such a hands-on person, and so I have this I have the arrogance of the technician, right? Where I'm like, oh yeah, you idea people, like once you're down in the muck, really how the ideas are formed, or whatever. But I've definitely come to appreciate like producers and people who and creative producers particularly, people who can guide things and who appreciate and take an interest in, even if they don't have an aptitude for what it needs to put things together.
For sure. And it always helps to shake it up. And this is a constant lesson. Like, I was the first video person at Game Informer, and like building out that studio, doing all that work, editors all the time would just be like, well, why can't this work that way? And it's like, look, I've been in the muck. You don't know how this thing is rigged up. This thing is duct taped together. There's no way. But there's like those 20% of times when someone says, why isn't it like this? Or they'll watch a video and be like, it would be so much better if you remove this part. And you'd be like, no, you don't understand. Like, I have the music timed perfectly. We can't adjust the timing of this at all. Then you sit back and it's like, no, they're totally right. Yeah. It helps to have that oddball lightning strike every once in a while to rattle your cage and then realize, like, okay, yeah, actually, you're totally right. I'm too in my mind about this.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like this happened with our show a bunch where, like, one of us will propose an idea and then the other two will just be like, that sounds dumb, but fine, I guess we'll try it. And then it'll turn out to be like the best possible decision.
Yeah, little indie teams, like our show, or like a game jam team, or like the Widget Satchel team right now. Like, having those kinds of conflicts is so invigorating, because once you have enough trust that someone's not like tearing down your idea because they don't like you, right? Like, then you can really engage them on it, and then you can feel a lot more comfortable saying, like, okay, maybe my idea isn't the best, and having that kind of relationship is really good.
What does that take? Do you just have to assemble a team that has a thick skin that can take it and know that it's not coming from a personal place? Because I'm very sensitive in the workplace, not outside of the workplace, but in the workplace, I will cry all the time. You know? And so how do you build up that team and just make sure that you're staffing up people that can take it, that understand that we all want the best possible product? It's nothing personal.
The examples that I can cite, it's a lot of friendships help. And like work friendships count, right? At that level of trust, and it takes a little while to get there, I think. And it doesn't get easy and stay easy, you know. Yeah. But I mean, I don't know, Martha. What's your experience here on the show, here on Mike? Oh, how do you get along and manage that process?
Well, yeah, I think friendship helps, like trusting each other, because like that can help you get through even creative differences. Like, I swore I was never going to work in a group with you at a game jam ever again, because like our work, like working on a game, like was so difficult that first game jam we worked on. But then like we ended up working on another game, and I was like, oh yeah, that's actually okay. Like, I know what to expect. I know where our friction is going to like be.
And where is it? Where is that friction? Let's really dive in here.
Yeah. Get version control.
I think that first one was, not to let myself off the hook, but that first one was mostly, Martha, fix Git for me. Martha, fix Git for me. To her credit, she fixed it for me.
Hey, good job. There we go.
I just don't know why whenever the repo gets to your laptop, it comes out like totally messed up.
Whatever it was 100% not my fault. I maintain that to this day.
Holly, how's your working environment?
Fine.
Okay, good.
Actually, I like my team a lot. We get along really well, which makes it hard because then we're all friends, and when someone quits, it's like, no, I forgot that this is the reason I came to work today.
Yeah. Then we have to bring in somebody new. It's going to be weird. It could take a year for their sense of humor to come out. It's always confusing, complicated.
Yeah, what are they about? Yeah, it's weird. It's very like not games related. Like, how is it to work at Goodwill Easter Seals, Minnesota? Let me tell you, it's fine. Yesterday, I tried to take a picture of the CEO and our the board chair, and the camera didn't work, and I look like a real dummy.
Oh no!
And had to run away. Like, just give me a second. You're very important. I don't know. I'm a communications manager. I'm not supposed to be doing this.
Oh, that's terrifying. Trying to get that stuff to work last second.
Does that ever happen with you when like developers come in? Like, are there ever disasters?
Developers are disasters on our part, or the developers'
Either
part?
way.
Yeah, it happens all the time. Like, primarily, I go on cover story trips. So I go out and visit video game studios, and we're usually there for like a day and a half, 2 days, and just film interviews and then get the hell out. But it happens all the time, and it's always scary because with cover stories, you're usually seeing a pretty early version of the game.
Yeah.
And so games are crashing all the time, all over the place. And it's just, it's so tough to just try and calm down a developer and explain, like, seriously, we see this stuff all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we're not going to write in the preview, and then there was a weird graphical glitch, and it crashed 14 times. Like, save that for the review, maybe. You know what I mean? Yeah. But everyone's so paranoid. It's like, what do you think a preview looks like? We're talking about the game. We'll give you the benefit of the doubt at this point in general.
I mean, I think even within the games press, people think reporters might be out to get them, or out to like get a big scoop. It's like, no, we're friendly. Yeah. You know,
we like games. We're okay.
Yeah. And you see a lot in those stories and in those videos. There's always caveats, right? Because like Game Informer, it would be sort of it'd be malpractice to just like present it as perfect in one of those kinds of things. But there's always that, like, if it turns out like how it looks, or like there's always there's a feeling of sort of like
they have a lot of work to do, but if they can pull it off, this could be quite the experience.
And a lot of that too is to make it so that, like, if the game comes out and is terrible, like that Game Informer doesn't look like they made the wrong call, right? So like there's some self interest there, but it feels like I don't know that gamers fully get that thing, and developers probably never understand that you're going to be kind to them, right?
Yeah.
Especially because it's so important to them in that moment.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about...
And they haven't seen the other developers who effed up too, right?
Exactly. I mean, maybe at GDC they talk to other developers, but it's nice to have this kind of weird bird's eye view where you just go and check out all these studios a little bit and get a flavor of each team's culture and stuff. And what I've been thinking about a lot lately, because they've announced that No Man's Sky Next, is we did a cover story on the original No Man's Sky, and going to Hello Games, Sean Murray, very nice guy. He looks at his shoes a lot during interviews, which is very frustrating. Like, what do I do with the camera? Like, do I just put the camera on the ground so he can't possibly get out of the shot? But he was constantly just making this, sad statements, but like, look, I know you're used to Naughty Dog, and we're not Naughty Dog. We're just a little studio here. Like, he just constantly kept referencing Naughty Dog. He's like, dude, we know you're not Naughty Dog. We're on board with your weirdo sci-fi game. It's fine.
Probably heard a lot about the Sony stablemates at the...
Yeah, probably. Where it's like, all right, we'll get you a glass of water for when you're in the studio. I know you're probably used to fine wine from Naughty Dog. It's fine, dude. Everybody's different their own way. But then in terms of like panicking and things crashing, it can also happen the other way where it's, I have nightmares about this. But going into a studio, you have very limited time, especially like, okay, schedule's mapped out. We're talking to this person here, game demo here. And so it's like, okay, you have a 30-minute window to interview this famous developer, right? It's like, all right, video guy, go. And it's like, okay, where do we have to set up? Let's scout this office as much as possible. Okay, we can't film over here because there's top secret concept art. Okay, it's going to be too noisy here. Okay, the lunch train, like when lunch happens, if it's happening around noon, everyone's going to walk through this hallway, so that won't work there. So it's like this crazy puzzle. It's like, okay, then the developer's office. They have a big office. It's like a creative director or something. Let's set up in there. But then the problem is they're sitting there, and it's like, sometimes it takes a while to set up like a 2-camera shot in this tiny little space, tweaking the lights. It's just a nightmare.
Oh no, there's no outlets.
Exactly. Do you guys have an extension cord? I don't know. Where's your IT guy? Let's talk to him. How does this work? And so it's so stressful just to have that 15-minute window of trying to set up these shots while trying to make small talk with the developer so it doesn't seem just super awkward with you in their office rearranging their desks. It is a nightmare. It's really the scariest thing I do.
Right, and they're probably sitting on the other side of that going, why is he so nervous? I don't mind, right?
Yeah, probably. And then the cameras start rolling, and then I say, why is the developer so nervous? Like, they're so much smarter than we are. Like, it's fine. Just relax, everybody. Yeah. It happens so much in developer interviews. It's so fascinating that you'll see and interact with this developer over a course of a couple days, and they're just incredibly smart, and you're humbled, and they're great, and they're enthusiastic and passionate about the game that they're making, which they should be. And then the cameras start rolling, and then it's just fear, right? And they just, okay, let me jump back to those marketing points. We have the 3 pillars of the game. Let me just walk through those. And it just sucks to see enthusiasm from developers drain out of their faces when the cameras start up. And Mark, I'm sure you're used to this, doing interviews, and stuff in the video world, but it's so tough to try and make people feel comfortable when there's a camera pointed at them. Yeah,
and then there's like the, I don't know, like the thing I always get was the restating the question and the answer. Ugh. Like for people who've not done these, when you're interviewing someone and you don't want you or a narrator narrating the questions in the final product, you say, I'm going to ask you a question, and then when you answer, please sort of restate the question and the answer, so we can just use it as a soundbite. And be like, oh, well, I've seen that before. I get that, and then they never do.
No, of course not. So yeah, we did that.
And you don't want to stop them, right? Because like they're getting out a good thought. We're like, please take 2. Like,
yeah, for sure. And so I just got to the point where it's like, all right, maybe it's a little bit narcissistic, and I don't want to do it, but like, I'll just mic myself up, and then in the off chance where we need the question to kind of explain what they're talking about, then I'll have that in there. And it's one of those things where you get up in your head about like, well, it's weird to have this video interview where it's the developer, but then twice there's questions in there, but ultimately it's that camp of people don't care. It's fine.
I think modern audiences understand the sort of cinema verite. They know they're like, they're okay with the little cracking of the fourth wall. And even like, even if you're not mic'd, like they understand like the little like muffled sound. So they kind of like that sometimes. And so using that just making use of what you end up with is more important than trying to get it the way you planned it.
Yes. I always think about this. I forget if there's a good example of this, but I see it sometimes with even high-level documentaries where the audio from the questioner is that muffled off-mic thing, where it's like, clearly they know that they should have mic'd themselves up, but how much is that's just the language of documentaries? And it's like, if they're worried about it, they could just redub the question. That's fine. But there's something about, you feel like it's a more raw experience if you hear this person yell from off camera.
I think they use that in that, it's the Netflix mockumentary, and I don't know how to explain it in an E for everyone way.
American Vandals, what you're talking about.
Yeah, you do. You're like, I'm there. Yeah, I think that it was completely scripted, but they used that same tool of someone speaking in a muffled way off camera to the people that they were fake interviewing.
Yeah, it's a little piece of language that tells the audience, oh, the documentarian didn't plan for this.
Yeah.
Right? And when something they sort of did.
Of course. Also, the dumb thing that I always love is a lot of good emotional documentaries always use it, right? Where the guy being interviewed, girl being interviewed, they'll answer the question, and then if it's like an emotional question, then there's always the long pause after the question where they're like, just like really digesting it. But in my mind, I know, well, the interviewer is probably asking the follow-up question, then they just take that audio out. So it's like really they're listening, but it makes it look like they just realize that it's something poignant and they're just like letting it sit in the room. There's no way that happened that way. No go.
There's some professor I had at the U who he has his own cable TV show on like at midnight on some like tiny cable channel.
Awesome.
And all he does is...
Do you have any other ways of putting them down that you're looking at?
No, but he does these... He never edits any of the interviews. It's just an interview show. So he sets up a camera in like a corner and like the person is sitting there and he is always muffled back behind the camera and he leaves in all of his audio. And there are these amazing interviews with like terrible production quality, but like the interviews are so interesting. But that just reminds me of that, like the muffled voice.
Yeah, you gotta have it.
What are the interviews about? I want to know more about the show.
They're just about like, he just interviews anyone he could, like anyone he runs into, like at places. He's just like, oh, he works a lot with the, what's it called? The Institute for Advanced Study at the U. So anyone who comes to give a talk there, he's like, you interview now.
Okay, sir. Oh my God. It's gotta be, that's an interesting push and pull between having the commercial style interview versus a more informational one, which is what we're trying to do at Game Informer. And it happens all the time where you're interviewing a developer and they're in their dev diary mode. Yeah. Right? Like produced by the company where they're like, all right, I know these lines. I know what has a good punch to it. And just trying to break them out of that rut can be so tough. And I don't know. It's something I found is it always helps to be genuinely curious on the interviewer's part and then just say like, I don't understand what you're talking about. And then it's a weird tip that I learned. This is the dumbest place to learn, but I learned it from Alan Alda. I heard an interview with him where he was...
Font of wisdom, Alan.
Oh, my God, my favorite. But he was talking about, I guess he produces and he stars in all these like scientific documentaries where it's like, you're going out and checking out blah, 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 blah. And he said that was the best way to get scientists out of that rut because they have their like canned answer. But if he just follows it up with, I don't understand, that is confusing me. Like, I genuinely want to understand this, break it down a little bit more. I still don't understand it, keep going. Yeah. Like that works with developers too, where if they say something, I don't know what a good flashy developer line is, but like, this is immersive storytelling. If you just say like, what does that mean? What are you talking about? And just keep drilling it in. Like they aren't expected to be thrown off that way, and it kind of gets a little more honest reaction.
Yeah.
I've been trained in the opposite way. So I've been trained as the person who doesn't fill in the reporter's silence because they want you to mess up. So it's like less of a friendly space, but they ask a question and they say nothing and they're waiting for you to fill in more facts, and I'm like, nope, you got my talking points.
Really?
And I'm not stepping out. That's more of a crisis communications, you're in trouble way. But that's good for when you actually want to understand something that's exciting, and it fits for them too in the show don't tell space, right? You're not supposed to say like, my game is totally immersive, and it's good of you to be like, tell me how, because then you're getting a better experience for everyone. You're helping them pitch themselves, you're helping other people, you're helping people who are viewing or listening see if they want to buy or be interested in this game.
Right.
But I have the like, you're in trouble. You're representing an organization that has a set talking points. Don't let the reporter trick you into saying more than you're supposed to.
I'm jealous. That'd be kind of fun. I mean, rarely, I think everyone's on the same page. We're excited about games. We want to talk about games with our types of interviews, And so rarely do we have like that confrontational interview. Sometimes it's like, okay, let's talk about microtransactions in your game. And the developer doesn't want to do that.
Right.
Maybe the producer wants to do it a little bit more, but
they don't want to put it in there either.
Yeah, exactly. So then it's always like some awkward moments throughout interviews, but I think it'd be fun to do like a full confrontational interview.
Nail someone to the wall.
Yeah, that'd be great. But few people in the games industry really deserve a nailing to the wall. Everyone's trying.
Yeah. Well, and like you were saying with the like throwing them off their game, like that. I mean, I'm sure a developer hears that and goes, "Oh no!" But like, what it is they still have the talking points. They just need to rephrase it in a more natural way. Yes. Right. And the talking points were there because they're not natural spokespeople, and so they were taking the things that was, and so like it all seems cynical, but in fact it does sound fairly like honest and genuine in a way for you to accomplish their goals in getting to them to explain to your audience what it is they want to say.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's such a bummer. One time I was setting up a shot with two very famous developers who I won't name from a very famous studio. And
was it Naughty Dog?
I'm not going to comment on that. And so I was setting up this shot and it was rolling. And then I was like, oh, actually, I forgot. I need to go get like a windscreen or something from the other room. And I went and got that. And then when I got back home and was editing the video and I got to go through like when I left the room, hearing like what PR and marketing's like talking to them about. Oh. And the part that killed me is the PR person is just like, just remember, rinse and repeat. That's what they said. It's like, oh, that's such a bummer to know. Like that's how developers are being coached.
Wow.
Before an interview is like, you know what you just said in that other room for the written interview? Just do that exact thing again.
Yeah.
No, for the video, we want to make it a little more lively, so it's not just this drained look in your eye.
What a horrible thing to be a developer and be told that too.
Yeah. Exactly.
Don't be excited.
Right. Well, no, you can be excited as long as you're just repeating the very specific things.
Yeah. That's interesting because I think gamers want to hear from developers, right?
Yes.
But the companies want to put out spokespeople, and so they just have to turn developers into spokespeople. Which I mean, it's the same thing that happens to actors when they go on talk shows.
Yeah.
But in a way that is like a little different, perhaps, because the expectation is so like you just wouldn't accept a publicist on late night, right? But because of the way how secretive the gaming industry is, that's essentially what they want to do.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. And it's a tough balance, too, because a recent example that works out well is Metro Exodus. We had the cover story for that. Mm-hmm. And it's a bunch of developers from the Ukraine, even though they're in Malta now, which was very strange. And so we're there filming in their studio, and the developers are very smart, but English is very much their second language, right? It's like, okay, they're so smart, but they're having a tough time communicating this. Meanwhile, we have the brand ambassador for Metro, like the more marketing guy, like ready to go. He knows all these beats. He can talk about the game. He knows it inside and out. Mm-hmm. It's like, what do you present to your audience?
Yeah.
What's more valuable? And ultimately we went with the actual, developers and then just tried to clean it up as much as possible. If you watch those video interviews, there's a lot of B-roll because there's a lot of trimming obviously happening throughout the course of that because they're so sweet. And I'm so happy that they're willing to be on camera. But it's just tough sometimes. It's like, I know you're uncomfortable speaking this language. We just want to understand it. And so please just feel comfortable in this environment. But knowing who's the best on camera is tricky. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think marketers and comms people, present company included or excluded, they don't recognize how powerful it is to have an interesting and even realistic personality.
Yes.
Explaining their game, explaining their product, whatever it happens to be. But on the flip side, I think of my boss's boss, my grand boss, if you will. When I set him up with an interview with a reporter, he wants talking points because he's just so nervous. So it's hard to kind of tell where it's coming from. Is it the like PR person who's shaking their fist and saying, "Don't go off script because I know that you're a disaster," or is it someone who they feel like they need a lot of help and they're not sure that they feel like if they do go off script, they'll say something that gets them in trouble or they'll sound dumb. It's a weird push and pull.
I hope you encourage them to go off script in a smart way.
Yeah, it depends on the person. If I know the nature of their going off script, it depends.
In the games industry, I feel like it pays to go off script maybe more than it doesn't. I mean, so much depends on the developer's personality and stuff, but it's fascinating to see those developers that just hit a chord with the audience in such a positive way, like Cory Barlog, the director of the new God of War. Mm-hmm. He's a good example of that, where like so many of those comments that I read way too much of on YouTube were just saying, I love this dude. Yeah. Like this dude's enthusiastic. And if he was a less charming guy or had a less charming personality, I'm sure maybe he would get in trouble for some of the things he said. Because like in that process of doing all those interviews for God of War, he was setting expectations very much in check. Like, I don't know if it's good. Like, we're trying our best. Who can say? And if he was just some meek guy with zero personality saying that, he'd be like, boo, you ruined God of War. But instead, the comments are like, that dude's got charm. I love it. I'm going to buy his game. You know, and you see it. Like, personality matters a lot. And just having that enthusiasm.
But also, if maybe he was out there putting out a new IP that might not have sold as well, that I'm not certainly sure. Like, 'cause people wanted the new God of War.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Yeah, you're totally right. But I mean, there's another example. Go back to Sean Murray, I guess, where it was the new IP. It was very scary. Yeah. And his stance was to look at the floor and say, I don't know. I'm sure Naughty Dog can sell this game, but we can.
Right. And still, the entire internet was like, you promised too much.
Well, the internet loved him up until release. Yeah. And then it turned harder than maybe I've ever seen it turn on anything.
Yeah.
It is insane, the level of hate that team got. And so it's really sad now because all I want to do is just have a long form interview, like follow up with him, just talking about that process, knowing what it was like emotionally for the team to go through that. It's just a crazy journey for those people. But there's no upside as he communicates it. Like, why? We'll let the game communicate it. We're fine. Like, we've been burned so hard. We're good. We're good forever.
Maybe you should just post a picture of him on Twitter and be like, every retweet, I give him a hug. And like the community can make up for what they've done.
I don't think they're interested in that.
Hello Games, hire Holly as your brand manager.
Please. I'll help make them feel bad for you.
Oh gosh, yeah, it's sad.
Well, we kind of veered right into it, but talking about creative leadership.
Oh yeah,
right, and in the AAA space, and that's something that we as indie devs, like, what can we learn from that? Because we talk about our team experiences, and they're a lot of times based on friendships, and they're based on the sort of like flat hierarchies of like you vote, right? This stuff like that. You know, you sometimes have someone who takes charge. But like knowing what it takes to manage a larger organization that has greater commercial concerns, like you've seen a lot of that.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I've never made a game. I'm not a creative director, so it's scary to talk about it with people who actually make games. But just from the 30,000 foot view and all that, you know, it's fascinating to see each different director and team have a different vibe and figuring out in general what works well. Because I love doing those interviews where it's just about, what's it like being a creative director on this project? Like, we did one for Assassin's Creed Unity, where it was just like a 30-minute interview, I think, just like, what does it take to be the creative director on an Assassin's Creed game? And maybe that one didn't turn out that well. And the internet then turned on this guy in a big way. But I love those types of discussions, even though it's not sexy new gameplay style headlines, you know? But it's a lot of communication. It seems like it's the very basic lesson for relationships and working relationships, everything. It was, the more you can communicate exactly what we're trying to do here, the better off we'll be. It's a lot of people reference, like, you know, at the start of a project, someone will make a big pitch video. Like, the creative director will stand in front of the studio and say, for 2 hours, all right, then this happens in the game. Then this happens in the game. And it's going to feel a little bit like this one movie mixed with this one movie. You know, like, the more people can just have something concrete to look back on and know which direction they're going, combined with, it seems like a big lesson is feel comfortable delegating. Trust other people in the studio, empower them and say, all right, it's all on you. This is your field. You can report back to me every once in a while, but please, art director, don't make me think about art too much. You know? And some creative directors have a tougher time with that, as from my perspective, than others, where some say, I want to review everything. Every detail of this game needs to go through me. And it creates this insane bottleneck, and then you end up with a 10-year development.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Getting that, not just that delegation to do the work, but also to make the choices.
Yes, exactly. Surprise me with your choices, and I'll try and be flexible instead of I'm known as the auteur. I'm the one doing the interviews. You know, like, people think I alone made this game, and a lot of the internet does. You know, and so it's tricky. Maybe. Hideo Kojima is maybe a good example of that, right? You know, where like I hear stories about him in the final days of development being like, the textures on these doorknobs are no good. Yeah, we need to go back and change all this stuff. It's like, Hideo, we got to let it go, man. It's a doorknob. Let's roll with it, you know?
So, you know, Steven talks a lot about like having a core idea that you go back to, right?
Yeah.
And if you have a team to make sure everyone is on the same page of, it sounds remarkably similar to what you're describing, that sort of pitch there. So that's nice to know that like that idea scales pretty well to indie.
Yeah. Well, do you feel like it does? I mean, from the start of your projects, do you look back at those early pitches and say, I don't know what the hell we were thinking. That's nothing like what we ended up with. That's not helpful.
Well, some I don't know.
Stop
so much?
interviewing us, Ben.
Oh, sorry, you're right.
No. I'm just trying to think back because it's hard to remember how some of them started. Clawbreaker was basically, it was so clear what it was going to be right from the start. But I think some of the other games I've worked on have been more like, oh wow, well, especially the first Game Jam we worked on. It was at the Global Game Jam a couple years ago, and we were making a game that was going to be something like an alien controlling Mulder and Scully from X-Files.
Controlling them?
Yeah, like mind control or something.
Okay.
The idea was that you were an alien who came to Earth and you needed to practice abduct or controlling people's bodies by getting them to brush their teeth. And so,
oh, good.
I remember this.
Yeah, and so because
it wasn't even X-Files. It just that happened because one of our artists' drawings ended up looking like.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
so it's just like weird physics nonsense where they're just like accidentally brushing their eyeballs.
It started out from an idea I had about control schemes, and that's what I got everybody rallied around. Or rather, I just sort of said, "Hey, this is what I want to do. You want to do it?" And they're like, "Well, I have nothing else better." So, and I wanted to do this thing where you had to figure out the controls. Like left didn't mean left or whatever, and so you had to sort of deduce like a device rather than a controller.
Okay.
And then, and I think somebody came up. We thought, we'll do a bunch of different daily routines, but then we all settled on wanting to do teeth brushing. And then the idea would be like, oh, well, the controls move your arms and like squeeze the toothpaste tube, but you don't know what button does what, and you have to figure it out, and that will be sort of fun. And then, it ended up being like, okay, then we're going to add this sort of like alien element to it. And so it was sort of an idea that had a lot of parents, right? And we all just kind of went with it as we went forward. And then when we realized we were kind of working on different things, that's where the little conflicts happened.
Yeah.
Right? And then it was like, toward the second day, I was like, this game has to be 2-player. It has to be a competition. Otherwise, it will not be replayable.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, it's not possible. It's not going to work. And then I was like, okay, fine, that's fine. And then I realized, I have a spare hour. I don't have a task right now. And then I just did it. And then like, I just kind of like steered the ship without asking anybody.
That's nice.
Like, it was not the best.
So like the thing that we imagined at the beginning, there's nothing like what ended up.
It changed so much from it. And just because like we didn't really know what we were doing, we kept hitting technical limitations. Like a lot of us were new to Unity at the time as the tool we were using. And Martha was the only one who knew how to use Git, and at the beginning and at the end. And so it kind of just it didn't have a vision. We had a lot of fun, but like looking back now at processes that have gone better, it does seem kind of like it seems like a disaster.
And now imagine if that game's development was 5 years,
I know,
and there
right?
are $100 million being poured into it, right?
Oh, God.
Is that just the perfect analogy of just game jams? It does have every like chapter in that arc, except just compacted down.
And not high stakes.
Right.
Thank God.
So I have a couple more questions before we let you go.
Absolutely.
Off into the mists, never to see you again.
That's right. Sorry, Steven. See ya.
So I want to just the position you hold in the gaming space is this sort of little interim place between developers and press. Because, like you say, you work on the video team, you host the Game Informer show,
right?
But you don't work on the magazine, and so you kind of see a little bit of everything. And I'd like to think that you're an observer, right?
Yeah, I'm a watcher from Marvel. Yeah,
exactly. So there's 3 questions. What would our audience find the most surprising about the gaming press, just in general?
Oh my
What is the
gosh.
thing that like would just be like, oh, of course. Like, why don't I know that?
Gaming press in general. I mean, this is the overall lesson in life in any business that I've seen, I guess. Industry is just how loose stuff is. Mm-hmm. Where you see like, well, this is clearly, they put out a magazine every month, but just seeing the internal workings of, someone will just make a slightly better pitch for something in a meeting and that'll shift things this way. And then this will drop out because of this. It's just, everything's mushier than you realize, I think is the lesson. That's not a fun, concrete takeaway. I don't know.
Well, it's important.
That's really interesting.
I think it's important to know because a lot of people, because if you're on the outside looking in, it can look very organized in there.
Yeah, good organization, Game Informer. We got our stuff together, but still, a good example of this is we just released an issue not too long ago where it's ranking the top 300 games of all time.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that's official. They're numbered. There's an official ranking, but like all it is you have 17 gamers in a room arguing and making cases, And sometimes it's all over the place, and sometimes it's like, you know, an editor-in-chief, for example, can say, I love that game. This is going high up there. And it's like, all right, well, I can't crack that wall, so all right, you have to live with it. But just, you know, that's a good concrete example of it looks so official, but it's just a lot of loose conversations that eventually get printed.
Yeah. And it sounds like a top list like that. Like the spirit in which it was written is like the same as the spirit in which you read it, which is fun little things about a bunch of games.
Right. Well, no, I think the way you read it is you say, what the hell? Final Fantasy VII is number 57 on this list. This is an abomination. Yeah. It has to be that way.
Okay, question number 2.
Yeah.
You meet with a lot of developers.
Yeah.
What is the most surprising thing you've learned about game developers?
That things are mushier than you think. Oh gosh, just raw talent. It's a certain humbling of going into these places and just seeing how much work is being put into these games, and it's very easy as press to sit back and be like, this game sucked. All right, moving on.
Yeah.
But just knowing that it's years of people's lives where they're probably crunching pretty hard throughout large stretches of that, just pouring everything into this game, and then maybe it's not appreciated as much. It's an easy, simple, dumb thing again, but just realizing they're like, oh, every game is interesting.
Yeah.
Basically, every developer is interesting. You could tell a story about every corner of the worst game, and you can make it compelling.
Right. I think that's what I like. That's why I always love reading about games I'm not that interested in. Because the stories are still good.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. If you have someone that can tell it well, but sometimes the developers are like, no one cares about this. I don't know. So it's so fun to go into that studio, even for that 2-day window, to try and get a sense of what's happening here. What are the internal politics in this office? Why is this game turning out this way? Why is this person the creative director instead of this person? This person clearly has all the good ideas. This person's just a better spokesman. I think I know what's going on. It's a lot of that type of thing.
Okay, lastly, this is most important to our audience.
Yeah.
Is Game Informer serves a huge audience of gamers. And you hear from a number of them.
Yeah.
What would surprise game developers most about gamers?
How much they want new experiences, I think. Yeah. Again, probably too simple, but people are ready for something new and different. A new twist on a genre, something they can have a fun time explaining to their friends, you know? That's probably my takeaway.
Like how you are, where you want to look cool by finding the cool game.
Yeah, everybody does, right? You always want to talk to your friends and be like, oh man, there's this game, Frostpunk, you got to check it out. It's like a survival sim. It's kind of like SimCity, but, you know, combined with some permadeath stuff, you know? Yeah, it's a fun thing to try and explain. So I think those twists can probably pay off more than you think. As long as it's a twist that's easily communicated, and you can boil it down to saying it's a twist of these things. Yeah.
Quite nice. Well, thank you so much for finally getting down to talk with us and for making that offer in the first place. Truly, like, I know that you're like beating yourself up over how long it took, but like it meant a lot to us, and it's great that you're here.
Oh, I'm so glad that you guys are here. Keep doing this good work. It's so fun to see the gaming community build up in Minnesota. It's awesome to see, and good luck getting more people engaged in it.
Awesome. Thanks so much. All right. Where can people find you if they don't already know where to find you?
GameInformer.com. It's a website. It's a magazine. there's a whole magazine that comes out every month too. Sometimes I contribute an entry in the top 10 or something. So that's always fun. You know, cover stories and stuff. And then the Game Informer Show podcast, it's available everywhere podcasts are, and then also on Game Informer site and on YouTube. We have the video version of it and everything there. Or I'm on Twitter with a very weird name, which is Yozetti. So you can find me on Twitter at YOZETTY.
All right. We'll put all that in the notes. So again, Ben, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right. That is our show. If you haven't already, subscribe to the Nice Games Club in your favorite podcast app. Be sure to give it a good review if you liked it, or a nice like us. We know you're out there. So leave a review and tell all your friends too. Ben, will you leave a review and tell all your friends and maybe listeners too?
Sure. Get ready for my review. It'll be great.
All right. Of course, we want to hear directly from you as well, so follow us on Twitter and all the other things at Nice Games Club. Lastly, you can find out more about the show, your nice host, our nice guest, as well as get all the links and notes from this and other episodes at nicegames.club. And so, until we start again, remember to
play nice
and make nice. Speaking of audio quality, I just want to shift your microphone
Which way?
Oh, so there's a little...
Great. Is this better?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah, I can hear myself now. That's helpful.
I mean, yeah, it'll be fine.
Okay, great.
I just want to make sure. Yeah.
Glad I slipped in that subtle reminder.
Yeah.